Yes, indeedy, folks. It's the Beer Drinker's Guide to the Great Wahoo. And now? Wow! I didn't know that. Today, let's take a look at the Antikythera Mechanism. What a phenomenal discovery this ancient machine was. Indeed, as far as we can tell, it was the world's first analog computer. The device got its name because it was discovered off of the shores of the island of Antikythera down between Greece and Crete. In the year 1900, a sponge fishing boat was coming back from Africa when it got caught in a terrible storm. Captain Dimitrios Kondos decided to harbor at Antikythera. Not people to miss an opportunity, the sailors of this boat decided to go out sponge fishing around Antikythera. Throughout human history, sponge fishing had been done by diving naked into the Mediterranean and finding what sponges were available while you could hold your breath. However, by 1900, modern equipment had made it so sponge divers could greatly extend their range. The divers would put on canvas suits with copper helmets and be lowered off the boat. They could go down as far as 60 meters and even more and stay down for extended periods of time because air was being pumped into their helmets. That is how it came to be that Elias Stadiatos was 60 meters down when he came upon a horrifying scene. Elias immediately pulled on the rope to be pulled back to the ship. Once he was on the ship, Elias reported seeing heaps of rotting corpses and dead horses. Captain Kondos thought surely Elias had been breathing too much carbon dioxide and had become mad. So it came to be that Dimitrios Kondos went down to take a look and was the first person to retrieve parts of a sunken ship from 2,000 years earlier. What Elias had considered heaps of rotting flesh and dead horses were indeed a trove of ancient statuary that was on a Roman ship heading back to Rome carrying Greek treasure. Research has led us to think the ship went down somewhere between 80 and 60 before current era, about 2,080 years ago. Dimitrios Kondos did the right thing and reported the find to the authorities. For the next 2 years, there was an intensive recovery effort at this site. And, indeed, there had been a great heap of corpses and horses. Amongst the many treasures from this site have been statues of a young boy, a Hercules, a discus thrower. There's also a marble ball, a bronze lyra, and many other small and common artifacts. Two of the more stunning and famous pieces are a philosopher's head and a larger-than-life bronze youth. Apparently, this youth was holding a globe or an apple, and many think that this is a representation of Paris giving the apple of discord to Aphrodite. During the second year of salvage, on May 17th, 1902, one of the salvagers was Valeros Steas. He was looking around on the ocean floor and saw something rather insignificant but curious. There, in a piece of rock, were what looked like some gears. Thinking very little of it, he reached down and picked up the stone and threw it in his bag, thinking, well, this is probably nothing, but we'll bring it along. The rock languished without much attention, while the more stunning and interesting pieces were curated and put into museums. The rock sat for several months, drying out on a back table. One day it split open, and a curator happened to notice some interesting patterns. What he found is the only artifact of the whole Antikythera site that has been described as, in terms of historic and scarcity value, I have to regard this mechanism as being more valuable than the Mona Lisa. Basically the size of a shoebox. For 50 years, people speculated about what this device was. In the 1950s, Carolandus Caraculus took x-rays of the device, and Derek Price used those x-rays to figure out that the machine was a much more complex instrument than we had assumed. Indeed, in all of antiquity, we have found nothing near this complex for the next 1,000 years after the sinking of this ship. In 2005, Hewlett-Packard took advanced photographic images that showed us many inscriptions on the device. To get an even better view, X-Tech Systems brought in an 8-ton X-ray machine. This machine was no ordinary X-ray machine. Technically, it was a 400 kilovolt microfocus computed tomography system. This amazing machine lets us shave through the rock and the mechanism microns at a time, coming up with layers and layers and layers of images. All 82 fragments of the device were X-rayed. There were 30 surviving gears, which made it possible to figure out that there were originally 37 gears. Where before we had been able to read 180 different characters that had been inscribed on the mechanism, we were now able to read 932 characters. The entire device is covered with instructions on how to use it and what the different points and indicators mean. The front of the device had a dial with many hands on it. These hands accurately predicted the phases of the zodiac, the annual calendar, the moon phases, the moon cycle, and the 5 planets as they moved through the heavens. Like all of the ancient astronomers, the Greeks understood that the Earth went around the sun and was a planet. They knew of 5 other planets that they could observe. The 5 hands on the Antikythera Mechanism that show the movement of the planets show them accurately as they move through the sky, including their retrograde, when, because of the Earth's motion around the sun, it looks like some planets slow down, go backwards, and then turn around and go forwards again. On the other side of the mechanism are 2 large dials, one above the other. It was thought that these large dials were made up of circles within circles. However, the 2005 X-ray revealed that these 2 dials are actually spirals going from the inside out, and therefore allowing them to cover vast amounts of time. The upper dial is a calendar of the lunar months. It shows 235 months or 19 years, with each month named. In 19 years, this metonic cycle is accurate to within 2 hours. To this day, we use the metonic cycle to plan flight trajectories and launch windows for lunar spacecraft. It is also used to calculate the Hebrews' 19-year calendar and to calculate the date of the Christian Easter. Smaller dials within this dial show a 76-year cycle and the 4-year cycles of the Olympic Games. The lower dial on this side of the mechanism shows the eclipses. The ancients understood that the solar and lunar eclipses begin a new cycle every 223 months, or 18 years. This dial shows that cycle. From what we can tell, this magnificent mechanism was built 100 to 150 years before Christ, 2,100 years ago. It was built from recycled brass plates. It was indeed an accurate and stunning computer. To see a fantastic working model and to learn more about this amazing device, may I recommend that you Google Antikythera Mechanism, look for video results, and click on workingmodel.move. This is a YouTube movie, and while you're there, check out the 2 movies about the Antikythera mechanism from Nature Video. They have a movie 1 and 2 that really show a lot of great history about this stunning piece of work. Let's get into old MacDonald's overalls and play E-I-E-I-O. It's East Idaho. East Idaho. Wow. It's not a very long drive, folks, and there are some mighty interesting things to check out over on the great eastern side of Idaho. During the end of September and 1st of October, my good friend Harold Moss and I had occasion to go exploring around eastern Idaho. On our first journey of EIEIO, we went exploring Rexburg, the Teton Flood Museum, and the ruined Teton Dam. We then drove Highway 33 over to 32 and up 32 to just before Marysville. This is beautiful, beautiful country driving along the west side of the Teton Mountains. Gorgeous farm country. On our last 2 drives, we've gone exploring Highway 47, the Mesa Falls Scenic Byway. We stopped by and took a look at beautiful Lower Mesa Falls. And we spent an entire episode just looking at the stunning Upper Mesa Falls, the largest undeveloped falls in the Columbia River system. Depending on the time of the year, the 2 Mesa Falls have between 387 and 967 million gallons of water a day pour over their edges. The water is the Henry's Fork of the Snake River. The drainage for the Henry's Fork of the Snake River is a vast area of eastern Idaho. Today we're going to look at the primary source of Henry's Fork. We're going to look at a phenomena called Big Springs. To reach Big Springs, we turn off Highway 20 at Max Inn. Beautiful little Highway 84 takes us 5 miles over to Big Springs. When we reach Big Springs, we cross the bridge and go looking for the parking lot. I parked in the parking lot that you see up at the upper part of this diagram, walked back to the place where it says, "You are here," and started taking photographs. The road that goes up to the parking lot is on the west side of these springs. It crosses a little bridge there that you can see going over the Henry's Fork of the Snake River. We'll be walking south, looking east toward the big springs. There are a few pictures taken of the river itself. Those look toward the west, but otherwise they are all looking back toward the springs as we walk toward the campground. At the very northernmost corner of the lake, we see a sign pointing out Johnny Sack Cabin. We'll look more at Johnny Sack Cabin here after a while. In the meantime, this is the beginning, the north end of the Big Springs. It was stunning to me how much clear, beautiful water is flowing out of this springs. And this is just the north end of it. Here we look from the north end down toward the south end of the springs. An overview of the north end of the springs. A marker that recognizes Big Springs as a national natural landmark. Here, the water of the Big Springs flows under the bridge and becomes the Henry's Fork of the Snake River. We're going to take a little look back from the bridge, back across the springs. Johnny Sack was a German immigrant. He stood 4'11". He built this little cabin and added on the water wheel. The water wheel provided him with electricity, and with this electricity, he pumped water into a cistern above the house to give him a pressurized water system. Johnny Sack lived here until he died in the 1950s. Today, you can walk around the springs and go visit Johnny's cabin during the summer months. And now, let's take another look from the bridge up across the springs, traveling over the South Springs, past Johnny's cabin, and up into the North Springs. Here we have the Henry's Fork of the Snake River as it leaves Big Springs. Little did I know it included a hummingbird. Big Springs is the single largest primary source of water for the entire huge Henry's Fork drainage system. Every day of every year, 120,000 gallons of water per day flow out of these springs. Throughout the year, the water from Big Springs is 52 degrees. This is a little bit warmer than the ambient air temperature. Certainly, this part of Henry's Fork never freezes, and this large quantity of 52-degree water keeps the rest of the Henry's Fork from completely freezing over during the winter. "30 miles downstream, this water will cascade over the Mesa Falls." And now we'll walk toward the south end of the springs. I was very impressed with how much water was flowing in from the springs to the north of the bridge. I was blown away by how much water is flowing into the springs to the south of the bridge. Here we are looking at the road from the south end of the springs. This is what you see when you first drive into the Big Springs area. There is a dispenser for fish food, and throwing fish food and duck food off the bridge is a favorite pastime. excellent interpretive signs tell us of the calderas that have created this area and make for the yearly gathering up of all this water. And finally, I could not resist one last shot of the north end of the springs as I went back to my car. So exactly what is the difference between a stockbroker and a pigeon? Well, folks, a pigeon can still make a deposit on a Lexus. And that's this week's Beer Drinker's Guide to the Great Wahoo. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you next week. And in the meantime, keep celebrating the Great Wahoo.